Hello, and welcome to FI for Kids, the podcast about starting and guiding your kids on the path to financial independence. I'm your host, Dominic Delacqua. Our guest today is Carrie Richardson, the Executive Director of Leadership Springfield, which is a nonprofit in Springfield, Missouri, that focuses on helping other nonprofits. Hi, Carrie, and welcome to the show. Let's start with you telling us a little bit about Leadership Springfield, and then we'll get into the kids stuff.
Awesome, thank you. So, Leadership Springfield is a nearly 40-year-old nonprofit. Many communities across the country have nonprofits like ours. Our official designation is a CLP, which means we're a community leadership program. We're a part of a national association. And what that means is that we believe that we are stronger leaders if we know more about our community, know the ins and outs of our community, know the strengths and the challenges of our community. And then also we're better and stronger community members and leaders if we grow in leadership development. So CLPs are all about building leadership development skills while also digging in and learning about the community. So we believe that both are important and make our companies better and our communities better. So we provide programs, really cohorts of programs for high school students and adult professionals of all ages and stages. We've been around, like I said, for nearly 4 decades. And we do leadership training, leadership teaching, exploring the community, and we love the work that we do. So we have a podcast called the FCF Insider Podcast, and it takes a look at how leaders are plugging in their community and the good work that they're doing in their businesses. And we enjoy lots of community leadership activities as a nonprofit. So we get involved with efforts such as in our community, we do a community focus report. We're on the steering committee for that. And essentially, it's a report card for our community. So we have blue ribbons and red flags, and we are a part of that and really helping tie what the community needs to move the needle on and what great things the community needs to preserve, and then connecting that really to the business community and how the private sector and public sector and nonprofit sector can work together. So that's a little bit about what we do.
Wow. No, that's great. Now, are there similar nonprofits in other cities as well?
Yeah, so there's several hundred around the country. So in I would say like mid to large metropolitan areas. Springfield, the metro area is a little under 500,000. So if you think through, cities about that size and bigger, many times have programs like ours. And again, the philosophy is, your community benefits when the leaders of businesses are engaged and plugged in and know what's going on in the community. And likewise, community leaders benefit from some of that community leadership. So we see that, really playing out in things like city council or mayoral races, or even legislative races. People who are serving on large boards in a community oftentimes benefit from being part of a leadership program in their local area.
Yeah, sure. That makes sense. That's great. And I just the whole idea of the community focus, I love that. That's great.
Yeah.
Okay, so moving on then. So you've got 3 boys, one that's 17 and
16,
two that are
almost
16.
17.
Almost
Yeah.
16, and the other two are 12.
Yes.
Twins that are 12. Okay. So I guess in terms of money management and finances and eventual financial independence and all that sort of stuff, what is it that you are hoping for your boys as they sort of, grow up and become adults? What would you want for them?
I want them to be good financial stewards of the resources that they have. And I want them to know how to handle their money on the day to day, but also plan for money in the future. So I kind of view it as both the here and now and also the big picture.
Mm-hmm. Yep, sure. So what have you taught them so far?
Yeah, I feel like that's a loaded question. So I will answer a few different ways, and then if you have questions about those, we can dive into them. So um I mean really I would say my beginning of or our beginning part of really teaching our kids about money, I was a part of a Mothers of Preschoolers group, which is a pretty common thing. It's called MOPS, and we had a speaker come and share about this book called The Three Cups. It's a kid's book. And the foundation of that is that you help your kids develop like three cups or three buckets of money, give, save, and spend. And it's to teach them both, having a giving heart, having the ability to spend, save for things and spend, and then ultimately save for long-term things. And so we did that with our oldest, where we took mason jars and we kind of did the activity as moms of preschoolers and like decorated them cutesy, give, save, spend. And we had that. So we talked about that regularly. We got the book, we read about it. So, I mean, even at the really foundational level, we we were able to do some of that training, teaching, and just like incorporating money management and like the incorporating incorporating money management and the essence of what does it mean to have money and what do we do with money. And from our perspective, that was we give, we save, and we spend money. And so
Hmm.
that was the
So just
foundation.
just to cut in real quick. So her kind of Carrie's pause there for listeners was that was one of her twins sort of coming in and out of the room.
Yes, he was doing
So
chores. He was doing chores to
perfect.
earn his allowance, right? So
So and also so that the you said that book was the Three
the three
Cups.
cups, yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'll get more information on that and put it in the show notes for anybody who's interested. But I've not heard of that before, so that's kind of a cool concept. So anyway, so go ahead with what you were
Yeah,
saying.
so we started with that, and then really I would say we played around with different things. So our kids, we found as we had kind of the second set of kids, which for us was twins, our oldest is very money motivated. So if he, if we asked him to do chores and there was money attached to it, he would jump up and do it. If there was something with money as an incentive, he was absolutely motivated by that, which was kind of made it easy a little bit. So, we had like trying to transition from sticker charts to chore charts to, okay, if you do these things, then they've got, money connected with them to
Hmm.
earn money. And then with that same concept of give, save, spend. But the twins really were not that motivated by money, which was odd as a parent to go from, oh, but this is the way that it works to, okay, well, if
Yeah.
you're not motivated by money, how do we teach you about the value of money, right?
Hmm.
And I wouldn't say that neither is right or wrong. It's just was a good example of how every kid is very different in
Very
how
different.
they feel about money and what
Yeah.
rewards seem like or look like.
Yep.
And so, sorry, hang on just a second. This is like my life with the kid fun and the chaos of all the things. So
Sure.
we we transitioned from, I would say, we did the three cups, we did the chore charts, we did essentially like incentives for tasks. And over the past, I would say decade, we've done some combination of that.
So
Go ahead.
well, just to clarify, so allowance wise, then it wasn't just sort of a set allowance. You had it more because well, not everybody, people look at this somewhat differently, or they can. So sometimes people look at it, well, look, it's an allowance. It's not necessarily, we don't want you to think of it as like you're getting paid for these things. You're doing things around the house to help out, but you're getting an allowance because you're not working. And I know other people look at it more like, well, you're doing these things. And so you also need some money. And so we're going to tie it to the task. And the more things you do, the more allowance you can earn. So it sounds like that's how you guys approached it.
Yes,
Okay.
at the beginning. And I think that's where and I didn't do a good job of explaining that, but we had that structure where like at the beginning it was like 10 cents, right? Like 10 cents for every task. And that worked great for my 16-year-old because he was super motivated by money. So that's awesome. But as the twins got older, that was not the case. So then it was like, well, I don't really care. I don't really want to do these things. And money's not a motivator to me. So why would I do them? And so we really changed our philosophy, and now we do it differently. So
Hmm.
now what we do is in combination with some other things, we have certain jobs that have to be done because you're a member of this household. Now, our kids are older,
Mm.
so we all have tasks that we do to be a part of this family. And we don't necessarily get money for doing those things. It's just a part of being a member of
Yep.
the family. And so there are certain tasks or chores that are just expected, which is awesome. However, um, when our kids got older, also motivated by my oldest, he has always been had like a little inclination towards like starting businesses and thinking about really he is very motivated by money. So how could I start a
Hmm.
business so I could get more money? So he came to us a couple of years ago and said, "My brothers and I want to do cleaning of that. Like we want to clean the house like you would pay a housekeeper for. We've started a business and they outlined for us like this is what we want to do. These are the tasks we're going to do. And if we do this, how much money will you pay us a week?" And so it was more like not just, hey, you need to take out the trash because we've asked you. So for us, that looks like every day we're taking out the trash because we live in this family. Every day we're doing dishes because we live in this family. Every day we're
Hmm.
doing laundry because we live in this family. There's no money tied to those things at all. However, if I was going to pay someone to clean my house, instead I would pay them, and they actually like created a name and everything for our family called Three Brothers Cleaning, and they literally wrote down these are the tasks, and they asked us if we would assign a monetary value to that. And so now that's part of the routine is that every it's supposed to be Friday, but every Friday after school they do Three Brothers Cleaning, and we have a chart on our fridge where they tally like the weeks that they do it, and then we give them money for that. Um,
Yeah.
Now they have bank accounts, and I mean we can talk through that about like transferring money into those bank accounts. In the past, it was cash.
Hmm.
But that's really what we've moved towards. So less just these are the tasks. Every time you do a task, you're getting an incentive to there's certain tasks that we have as a family. Like I don't get paid to do laundry, right? Like the dishes have to be done. So our philosophy is those sort of things are just a part of being the family. You don't get extra
Right.
money for that. But the Three Brothers Cleaning, which is essentially they're providing the services that I would pay a company or
Like a house
service to
cleaning
do.
service for.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, that's really, and that's just a cool idea for them, right? And then now, are they doing it anywhere else or just at your house?
So they did want to do it other places, but there wasn't anyone that was able to or wanted them to do it, which is fine.
Sure.
They
Well, and they may have found, oh, wait, this is more time than we wanted
yes,
to spend.
yes, and it's
But
hard. It's
still,
not so easy.
yeah, it is hard. Well, and especially if you're doing it for somebody else and they've got, you know what I mean? They're going to be potentially less forgiving than you might be.
Yes.
But still, right, just the idea that they had that idea and they wanted to sort of look at it that way is really, that's awesome, right? Because even if they're not doing it elsewhere now, that's still an idea that's potentially in the back of their minds that they could, when they're ready, right, do in the future, right? Or they could translate that into other things, right? I mean, when I was younger, I had done that. I did lawn care. I worked for somebody who had like a yard mowing service. And then, some years after that, I did it a couple times on my own and made good money from it and learned a lot of stuff. And it was great. So I think that's awesome that they're doing that.
And we lived in the country, so we also like we talked about that, and the boys, especially my oldest, has mowed for us, but like that wasn't an
Oh,
option,
yeah.
right? So we didn't have
Yeah.
neighbors really that we could mow. So this was a way for them to do that.
Oh, yeah, sure, sure. So to back up for a second, so you had the three buckets. Did you set percentages or how they would divide that up? Did you guys set that for them?
Yes.
And how did you divide that
Yeah,
up?
so the
And has it changed over time?
it hasn't changed over time, but the parental oversight of how it's done has changed. So I would say
Hmm.
at the beginning, which is why I said we did a lot with 10 cents because it was 10% give, 10% save, and then 80% spend. And so, which is
Hmm.
really the three cups model. So we followed that and we basically paid everything in dimes. So it was pretty easy just to take
Oh,
that.
sure.
Um, we've worked, so yes. And what that has evolved to over time is as a family, their cousins who live close to them, they contribute some of that money towards um, they pick out of either Compassion International or World Vision, like the holiday catalog where they're able to like pick out buying goats or chickens or giving jobs to women in a third world country. Like, so we
Yeah.
pool our resources together from that give, and provide that, as well as um, just like monthly giving to like their youth group or something like that during a
Hmm.
Wednesday night youth group service. But so that has happened. I would say they have a harder time with save, which I feel like is not uncommon. But what I haven't talked about that we also do is we have used Stockpile for investments for them, and that has been their money. So they've been gifted Stockpile gift certificates. They've put
Hmm.
money into Stockpile, and they've been able to watch that grow. And so Stockpile is an app that allows fractional sharing, and it's also built for families to have kids. So the stock is in my name, but it's also connected to them, like with
Yeah.
their information. And so that's been really great for them to be able to save that way as well. And then they have bank accounts as that we are connected to their bank accounts. Some people I know use Greenlight, which is very
Hmm.
popular. It's worked well for us just to go to our local bank, create an account, a checking account for all of them. And then my oldest also has a savings account. Um, and then we're able to move money back and forth.
Now, with the stockpile, are they picking their own stocks or ETFs or what have you? So they're kind of
They
looking and
are.
doing, you're kind of helping them with some research, I'm guessing, and then they're
Yeah.
deciding where they want to put their money. Now, are they putting any of their own money that they've earned in there, or is it just money that they've received as
Yeah,
gifts,
so
or
it's
both?
both. At the beginning, it was some of their own. As time goes on, it's been mostly gifts, but they completely decide. So I don't tell them what to do or even really discourage them from doing anything. Stockpile is really great and has some training where it teaches them.
Hmm.
It's modular basically, so it goes through and teaches them about stocks. We did that together with them,
Sure.
and then
Cool.
they were able to pick, and it drives even their consumer decisions. So one of them owns Nike stock, and so he's like, gotta support my stock, right? And so he buys Nike shoes, and he likes them anyway, but that is also part of, like, he's making consumer decisions also based on the stocks that he owns.
That sort of thing ties in so much with sort of the FI mindset, right? Because in FI, when you really get sort of motivated to work towards financial independence, especially at a younger age than kind of traditional retirement age, it's inseparable from, I mean, there's money management part of it, right? And understanding your finances and investing and making the most of all those things. But that's also always inseparable from choices you make and what you decide to spend your money on and what you value, right? Because you're not going to have unlimited resources. And so chasing every last distraction, right? And then just always your money comes in and then all of it goes out. Then you're never able to sort of get anywhere. So you've got to make choices. And so in the FI world, right, there's no separation really between, I mean, ultimately, right, it's a life optimization strategy and money's just a tool to help you get there and give you more time and more freedom to do the things, whatever those things are that you want to do. So that's cool that he's already, I mean, in his own way at least, right, in an early sort of way, starting to connect how he's spending his money and how that ties into money that he has invested. So yeah, no, that's cool. I like that.
Yeah. Yeah, and then we also have 529
Yeah.
accounts for all of the kids that we contribute to monthly, and they're also gifted to in those. And the 529 education accounts for us have been also a way for us to have really productive dialogue about future decisions.
Yeah.
So instead of maybe pressure decisions of like where you want to go to college or what do you want to do, just talk about more, we have this account, these are the different things it can be used for, which is not just a traditional 4-year degree, but also lots of different, ways that they can use that money. Um, and so to help them understand expenses that are coming in the future that don't mean anything to their 12-year-old brains, right? But a 16-year-old is is having those conversations and thinking a little more seriously about maybe I do need to, hunker down and study for my ACT and, think through like I want to maximize the dollars that I can get from a school because I also have this other, fund but don't want to deplete it. So just able to talk through that. So
Yeah, yeah, sure. No, that's great.
yeah, and then in the last 6 months, we've also moved. And so just from a parenting perspective, that whole process of moving and making the decision to move has been done with the kids in a lot of ways.
Oh, that's great.
More so, I feel like, than maybe how I was raised, not in a negative way, but just really talking through and really walking through like, this is what it's going to mean to move. This is what it's going to mean to our family. This is even like the financial aspect of why this is a good decision for us. And
Mm,
we really had an investment property essentially, and we were not planning on selling it, but out of the blue got an offer and really had some conversations with the kids about college and
mm,
future and why we would do something like this and why we make decisions and just having some good just overall just how we make financial decisions, and also that there's not necessarily, at least in this case, necessarily a right or a wrong
yeah.
decision, but it was a decision that we chose and we did it for specific goals and we're happy that we did it.
Yeah. I think those kind of conversations with them are so important, right? Because it loops them in and lets them be a part of things, but also, right, it models for them and teaches them and lets them start to be at least some sort of part of those are the kind of decisions that you have to make when you're an adult, right? And when you're being successful, right, you are thinking those things through and weighing pros and cons and different options. And sometimes those decisions are hard and you have to kind of wrestle with them, but that's part of things. So bringing them into that process early, I think is great. Were they initially, when you first started talking about it, before you started having those more in-depth conversations, were they reluctant to move just because it was what they were used
Oh
to?
yeah,
Yeah.
they did not want to. And actually my oldest was like, just tell me the number. I mean, which is not surprising because I've shared he's always been kind of inclined that way. Was like, well, just tell us the numbers. Like, what does it really look like? And we were like, okay, well, normally we probably wouldn't have those conversations. So we talked about like, this is not something that we want you to like go around talking about, but like we
Yeah.
will talk to you about like, what does this look like for us and why would we make this decision? And really walking through those things was beneficial, I think, for them, even to like logically rationalize why we were making the decision. So it wasn't just like an emotional decision, but it was like a calculated, intentional decision.
Yeah.
Um, so that's been interesting.
Yeah, you bring up a great point. I think it's super important that we talk to kids about money. And I think as parents, we teach kids so many things, right? You start off when they're little and you teach them how to sort of how to share and how to be nice to other people and how to sort of behave. And, you teach them how to ride a bike and eventually you teach them how to drive. And we teach them all kinds of things. But so many people, we don't haven't traditionally, right, as a culture and a society done a good job of teaching them about money. And it's a little bit awkward, right? Because people still don't talk about money like in detail with their friends and even their family oftentimes. And that's pretty much sort of normal, right? Like, most people don't know what, their neighbors or their friends or even their family members make per se, and that's okay. But then that can lead to, well, not talking to your kids about that stuff, right? So not talking to your son when he asked about, well, tell me the numbers. It's like, well, wait a minute. It's an opportunity for him to learn and understand that stuff. And we actually just had a conversation with our kids about that just a couple weeks ago. Like, all right, we're going to start talking about some of these things more. You're a little older now, but that doesn't mean you talk to everybody you know about whatever conversations we have, because that's not necessarily normal. So we want to talk to you about these things so you're not in the dark, right? It's important for you to learn, but it's also okay to keep some things private.
Yeah.
So anyway, so I guess that actually though leads me to a question. So actually two questions, and answer these in sort of whatever order you want. Any any thoughts on your part as to why, just in general, we as a culture, we don't do a better job of talking about money, but also when you were younger, what what did your parents teach you about money? How much conversation did you guys have or not?
Yeah, so I'll get to like why do I think it's that way as a culture in a second, but I feel really fortunate because Um, my parents, specifically my dad, was very open about teaching us to be responsible with our money. Like when I think back, I remember countless conversations, actively like teaching, training. My dad bought, I can't remember what it's called, and he would be like, Carrie, you should remember this. But
Mhm.
it was essentially like a whole money management system where we learned to write checks and balance a checkbook and have a debit card and all of it.
Yeah.
And he walked us through exactly how to do that and why, and you know, had a had bank accounts for us and walked us through saving and spending. And we knew that they gave regularly and were involved in those discussions. Um, and so, in terms of like how I manage money and like setting up the structure of like paying bills and saving up for expenses, like I can't I don't even know how many times we would have conversations. Like I've lost track of the amount of times we would have conversations about wanting something and saving up for it, but then we saw it happen. So
Yeah.
it wasn't like this, oh well, we can't buy that today. Like my parents, I don't ever remember them buying anything on a credit card. Like it was just very much
Hmm.
like if we want something, we work towards it, we save for it, and we get it. And we saw that happen over and over and over. So it never seemed like it was something out of reach. Like,
Yeah.
and I think if you, so I want to get into eventually like the scarcity versus abundance mindset, because I think that has a lot to do with maybe some of why we don't talk about it. But for us, it was like make the path that you want, right? So you have all the tools to be able to have what you want. Now, you might have to work hard, you might have to, save, invest, not buy something here because you want something later. And that was,
Yeah. Right.
we heard it and we saw it lived out, which I'm
Yeah.
very fortunate about that. I mean, very, very fortunate about what my parents showed me. What we didn't get was, I would say, like the specifics, which I don't know that that was something that was like purposely not shared, but I just don't think that it, maybe even at the time, it was something that anyone would talk about. It was like just not a topic that you really talked about. So like
Yeah.
I don't think I ever knew what my parents made or didn't make. We never talked about even really like how much vacations cost or anything like that. Now we knew that we were working towards things, and then we got to see the fruits of that labor and get to go on vacations and have nice things, and I'm grateful for all of those, but we didn't
Sure.
have a like this is this is like the rundown of the money situation
Yeah.
conversation.
Sure.
um I do remember having conversations about tight times. Like we would have family meetings and we would sit down and just say, hey, we've been eating out too much. And without the specific numbers, like not really specific numbers, but just like we need to dial that back. So we're going to do this instead so that we can do this big thing. Or
Yeah.
because you guys are involved in XYZ activities, we're going to need to make sure we eat more meals at home. Right. And so they articulated to us why we were doing things, which I appreciated.
Well, it's back to that choice thing again, right? You've got to like make, you don't have limited resources in the sense that you're like, you're having to like have dog food for dinner, but you have
Right.
limited resources in that like it's not just, it's not endless, right? You're not Bill
Right.
Gates. So, it's you have to make choices, right? In order to prioritize the things that matter the most to you at any particular time or even in the
Yes.
future.
No,
Anyway,
no,
sorry, go
that's
ahead.
totally true. And so I would say as I got older, um, I definitely have continued to have conversations with my dad, and now as an adult have much more open conversations that involve actual dollars and numbers and talking
Hmm.
about investing and getting his advice, and just in terms of like how he has been successful in growing wealth, in retiring, in all of those things. And um I look up to him a lot for that and have learned a lot from that. And I would say I take what I learned and probably add more layers of like transparency. Not that there was any like intentional non-transparency, but just I take what I
Sure.
learned and probably share even more with my kids.
Even
And
more.
maybe
Yeah.
that's because I also have kids that are inquisitive and want to learn and are bright. And
Mm.
like, I know that if I share specifics with them, it's going to make more sense for them. And then ultimately, the path for them is going to be either easier or more understandable. And so I follow a lot of that. But
Yeah.
I think, like, from a bigger picture, society wise, I think there is, yeah, go
Before you
ahead.
before you get into that, Carrie, though, real quick. So I just think so two things, right? I think that's great that you're kind of doing even more than what you did. And what you got from your parents like sounds great. I think it's a lot more than what a lot of people got from their parents in one way or another. So I think that's fantastic. And obviously, right, it's worked out well for you, and led to sort of good conversations in with your family, right, with your boys that you've even sort of then added more to, which I think is great because, um, one of the other things that we want to sort of cover eventually in this podcast is this idea of starting and guiding your kids on the path of financial independence and parents helping kids. That doesn't end, right? It's not just kids that are your age, right, that are still living at home, that are, haven't graduated high school yet, but it's you, right, who's got a family of your own, and you're still getting advice and consultation, and sometimes even potentially, right, people get help from their parents or grandparents, or they'll get financial advice from, other family members, aunts and uncles, or whatever it might be, right, or who might help them with a home or invest in a business and all kinds of things, and it never ends. So this idea of kind of FI for kids is really sort of a lifelong sort of thing.
That's definitely played out for me. Absolutely played out for me.
Yeah,
And
I love that.
I mean, it, even talking about like my kids and how they're involved with just money in general. I mean, fast forward, my dad and my 16-year-old and I are in the middle of a business venture together. And that was the result of my son wanting to start a business. I mean, like I shared, he's always been that way. And my dad had this invention and
Yeah.
idea, and my son said, well, why don't we do something with that? And I,
Hmm.
have helped with other businesses that my dad has done in terms of like business development and even like business models and plans and things like that. And so, the three of us are participating in that and, have invested. And so each of us invested a certain
Yeah, that's
percentage
so
to
cool.
form this company and, be working on this long-term goal. And now the twins are saying, like, how much is it for us to invest? Like, can we get involved? And so I think there's also that, like, not just investing and really having that conversation long term in lots of different ways. Like for me, it's not just money, cash in the bank. It's also investment stocks. It's for my kids, school funding for college fund, that sort of thing, retirement, as
Sure.
well as, business investing. We've had conversations about real estate investing many times with our kids.
Yeah.
Every time we travel, we're like, maybe we can do this, thinking through how we do it and walking them through this is what that would mean and how it would look. And so I think we are having those conversations on a regular basis and fairly openly.
Yeah, that's awesome. So societal stuff you were gonna talk
Yeah,
about.
society stuff. I mean, I wouldn't say I'm by any means an expert at any of that. I do think this generation of kids. So I'll just say Gen Z because that's what my 16-year-old is. The
Hmm.
twins are like, I think, right at the beginning of Gen Alpha, and who knows what they will end up having, like what that generation will be like. But I do think Gen Z as a whole, I feel like, and I mean, just in general, I feel like Gen Z is very activator mindset. So it's like if there is something to be done, like let's do it, let's get
Hmm.
involved in something. I think overall, like wanting to make a difference in the world is something that is valuable and important to people in that age demographic. And so I think with that comes some also impatience. Like I've noticed some impatience, like, well, I want to do it. I want to move forward. I want the money now.
Yeah.
I want to see the dream realized like faster than 20 years from now. And so in some ways, I feel like at least from my perspective, I feel like that's driving like when I say activator, I mean like that's driving more of a like, let's just do it. Let's get on with it. Let's figure out what it is and let's move forward. And it doesn't mean that every kid is that way or every person who is Gen Z is that way. I'm not saying that, but I do think because of that, I think maybe there's more questions. There's more like, if I want to make a difference, I have to be able to have the financial resources to be able to do that. And also not work all the time. Like, I think that that's not a terrible thing that the upcoming generations in the workforce are not willing to work 80 hours a week. Like, I think that's healthy and they shouldn't,
Absolutely.
and we shouldn't. And, like if you think back, like I am a product of a family that worked really, really hard all the time. And
Yeah.
now they're telling me, like, we're sorry, we don't want you to work that much. And I'm like, I know, but I'm wired to work that much. So I'm having to teach myself it's not healthy to work that much. I should work to have a life, right? And to have a life,
Yes.
you
Well,
got to have the financial resources to be able to do that.
which is that's the whole heart of FI, right? Like, you know, increase your savings rate so that you can invest that money, right? Make it work for you and get to a point to where you can hit financial independence, and retire early if that's what you want. Now, most people, right, if you can get to financial independence, before retirement age, don't want to just sort of stop and do nothing, right? But
Right.
then it frees you up to not have to work as much or to focus on a job maybe where you make less, but you get more satisfaction out of it. Or people that have other interests, right? Maybe they've always had a love and a talent, a knack for music, but they didn't want to pursue being a musician as a career or being an artist as a career or whatever it might be because like, well, it's too hard to make a living. But if you're financially independent, then you can focus on those things, or you can start your own nonprofit that focuses on something that you're really passionate about because now you're spending your time and energy on doing something that you really love and are passionate about. And if it makes some extra money, great. If it doesn't, that doesn't matter. You're still providing value for the world, but you're not depending on it for your income because you've gotten yourself to a point where you're financially independent. So no, I think you're spot on with all of that, right? And then if you can help guide your kids towards that, I mean, obviously, right? We think that's fantastic because that's the whole point of FI for kids. So yeah, that's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, but I do think like just as a society, we probably talk more about it because there's a demand. Like I think if I
It's
mean
changing now.
I do think my kids are and not in like a mean way, but like demanding more information. Like, well, why?
Yeah,
Like, what's the
good
point
for
of this?
them.
And why should we do this? And why shouldn't we? And however, those traits are difficult sometimes when you're employing people who are of different generations, like there's great value in that because it forces us to have conversations about things that maybe we wouldn't have gotten into as much detail about before, and that's okay. So,
No, I mean that's a good thing, right? Like having open dialogue and kind of different opinions, dissenting opinions, right? I mean those things are important because that's how you make sure that you don't get stuck in a rut and that you continue to move forward, right? And it's not sort of perfect and it's not like every dissenting idea like, well, all right, we have to do that. It doesn't work that way. But if you're open-minded and willing to listen, even though some things you might be like, well, that really doesn't work or we can't do that. But you know what? These other things, like you've got something there. Let's figure out how we can incorporate those because that will make us better. Right. And that's what good organizations, good politicians, good families, good anything, right? That's good friend relationships. That's how they function. Right.
yep,
So, yeah.
yep.
Okay. Well, we should probably wrap up. Any other thoughts?
Oh gosh. I would say I think the hardest part about this with having kids is like I don't want it to sound like we have it all together. Like the reality is this is really hard in the day to day because I
Hmm.
mean I gave you some examples and those examples are absolutely, real life and what has happened, but there's, weeks and months that go by that are just we're just doing life and things are hard and busy and our schedules are insane and we
Yep.
don't always have the conversations and the things that we need to have and we don't do a great job. I kind of mentioned like the give, save, spend mindset like in the busy seasons like that is doesn't have as much parental oversight, right? Because
Sure.
we're just going 100 miles an hour. And so
Yeah.
um I think just to also be realistic about like setting goals either for a kid or as a family. What do we want to do? What's important to us? I think that's important too. And for me, I'm a really goal driven person. So I can see like, okay, a year from now, what's important to me that my kids know or understand. Sam, my oldest, he's required to take a personal finance class in high school. So one of my goals for him before, I think a year and a half ago, I made a kind of like a life skills list for him of like these are the things that are important that I want him to like graduate with, and they don't have anything to do with really like something that you would learn at school.
Sure.
And so he is taking a personal finance or financial management class that is required, but like I'm going to dig into that a little bit this year. Like, what are they teaching you? And is it like how basic, how advanced? What else do we need to, go into? I mean, he has had a job for a while, so he's learning that process of getting a paycheck and how quickly it goes to gas, right? When you're driving and just things like that. So like the individual here and now, but also the big picture. And so I feel like I am in a stage of trying to be realistic about giving myself time to accomplish those things because it is a big job and it doesn't just happen with like one conversation or one decision.
No, right? I mean, nothing with kids happens that way, and it's an ongoing thing. And it's, and you're right. Like, I think we all go through that. You have periods of like, oh, we're really sort of focused and we're working on this thing, and then you just get busy and distracted with other things that are also important, and then you have to kind of make a point to sort of come back around to those things. But the goal, I think, right, what we hope all of us is over time, you're still continuing to make sort of progress along those things. So,
Yep.
yeah, no, I think that's great. So it's really thank you so much for coming on. It's been a great conversation. We'll have to have you back and then maybe get your dad and your son on in a
Oh yeah,
future
that'd be fun.
podcast, and you can sort of tell us about kind of what's going on with the business and how that's going, and we can have a whole like generational show, which would be great.
Oh yes, so we've got big financial plans and goals for the business, so it'll that'll be fun to talk about.
Yeah, no, awesome. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much, Carrie.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you, everyone, for listening to this episode of the FI for Kids podcast. Please subscribe and follow the show. That helps get the word out to other parents and kids that are interested in pursuing their journey towards financial independence. And it also helps us continue to attract interesting guests. You can find contact info for our guests as well as links for books and other resources in the show notes and at our website, fiforkids.com. Our intro music is provided courtesy of Douglas Cameron. You can find Doug's music at douglascameron.net, Spotify, Pandora, and Amazon Music. Our exit music is provided courtesy of the Zoo Human Project. You can find their music on Spotify and Pandora. You can also find them on Facebook. Thanks again, and we'll talk next week.
Life was once the standard of the day. Now most rot in the material plane. With art on the back burner and makeup in the microwave. How can a world full of flavor be so painfully bland? What should we do? Redefine value. Satiate the NRU. Oh, yeah. Let the music move you. It's better late. It's better late than never. purify this polluted stream. Leave our suits on the bankside, let our souls get swept away. We'll empty out into the ocean and rise up under the rays of the sun. What should we do? Redefine value, satiate the inner you. Oh, yeah, let the music move you.